Dark Secrets of World War II. Uncovering the Untold Horrors. World War II, 1939 to 1945, is widely regarded as one of the most brutal and transformative events in human history. While the well-documented battles, leaders, and politics of the war often dominate historical narratives, there exists a darker, more disturbing side to the conflict. A realm of secrets buried under the rubble of bombed cities and behind the walls of concentration camps. These secrets, some deliberately hidden and others only recently unearthed, reveal the war's most sinister dimensions. From unethical human experiments to political betrayals and hidden agendas, the following explores the dark secrets of World War II that continue to haunt the modern world. Unit 731, Japan's inhuman experiments. While Nazi medical experiments are infamous, the lesser-known Japanese Unit 731 was equally, if not more, horrifying. Based in Manchukuo, now northeastern China, this covert biological warfare unit, under the command of General Shiro Ishii, conducted cruel experiments on live human beings, referred to as logs. Civilians and prisoners of war, including women and children, were subjected to vivisections, dissection without anesthesia, exposure to deadly diseases like anthrax and plague, and frostbite testing where limbs were frozen and amputated. These experiments aimed to develop biological weapons and understand human limits, but at an unspeakable cost. Even more disturbing is the fact that after Japan's defeat, the US granted immunity to Unit 731 scientists in exchange for their research data, thus allowing war criminals to escape justice in the name of military advancement. Operation Paperclip, Nazis recruited by the US. After the war, the United States secretly launched Operation Paperclip, a program that brought over 1,600 Nazi scientists to work in American industries, science labs, and even NASA. Among them was Wernher von Braun, the rocket scientist responsible for Germany's V-2 rocket program, which killed thousands of civilians in London and Antwerp. Though many of these scientists were associated with the Nazi regime, some had even used concentration camp labor to build their war machines. The US ignored their war crimes in pursuit of technological superiority against the Soviet Union during the Cold War. This morally questionable operation shows how quickly former enemies became valuable assets when political and scientific gains were at stake. The Holocaust by bullets, forgotten massacres. The Holocaust is often associated with the industrialized murder in concentration camps like Auschwitz and Treblinka. However, an even darker chapter lies in the Holocaust by bullets, mass shootings carried out by Nazi Einsatzgruppen in Eastern Europe. Between 1941 and 1944, these mobile killing units, often aided by local collaborators, executed over 1.5 million Jews in forests, ravines, and open fields. Victims were often forced to dig their own graves before being shot. Unlike the gas chambers, these executions were up close and personal, carried out in full view of communities. The scale and brutality of these killings remained a dark secret for decades, overshadowed by the concentration camps, until researchers like Father Patrick Despa brought attention to them in the 21st century. Allied war crimes and strategic bombing. Though the Allies are widely viewed as liberators, they too committed war crimes, many of which were swept under the carpet. One of the most controversial acts was the firebombing of Dresden in February 1945, where British and American bombers reduced the German city to ashes, killing an estimated 25,000 civilians. Dresden had limited military value, and the bombing created a firestorm so intense it melted asphalt and suffocated people in underground shelters. In Asia, the bombing of Tokyo killed over 100,000 people in a single night, surpassing the death toll of Hiroshima. Civilians were deliberately targeted in an effort to break morale. These events reveal that both sides in the conflict adopted total war tactics, often blurring the line between military necessity and inhumanity. Soviet atrocities, the other side of tyranny. While the Soviet Union played a crucial role in defeating Nazi Germany, Joseph Stalin's regime committed widespread atrocities of its own. As the Red Army pushed westward, they carried out mass rapes, looting, and summary executions in German territories. Estimates suggest that 2 million women were raped in Germany alone, some repeatedly, and others even killed afterward. Another dark episode was the Katyn massacre of 1940, where Soviet secret police, NKVD, executed over 22,000 Polish military officers and intellectuals, aiming to destroy Poland's leadership class. For decades, the USSR denied responsibility, blaming the Nazis, only to finally admit the truth in 1990. The Soviet gulags, forced collectivization, and political purges further demonstrate that victory in World War II did not equal moral purity. The betrayal of Eastern Europe, Yalta's shadows. At the 1945 Yalta Conference, Allied leaders Franklin D. Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin divided Europe into spheres of influence. This political compromise effectively handed Eastern Europe over to Soviet control, setting the stage for 4 decades of oppression under communist regimes. The betrayal of Poland, in particular, remains a bitter memory. Despite being the war's first victim and one of the Allies, Poland was denied true independence and remained under Soviet domination until 1989. These geopolitical deals, made behind closed doors, shaped the post-war world and ignited the Cold War. They also betrayed millions who hoped World War II would bring freedom, not just a change in masters. Human shield tactics and the use of civilians. Throughout the war, various forces used civilians as human shields or forced labor. The Nazi Wehrmacht, especially in the Eastern Front, often rounded up civilians to walk ahead of tanks, to trigger landmines or draw enemy fire. In Japan, civilian populations were militarized. Women and children trained to fight with bamboo spears in anticipation of an Allied invasion. Kamikaze attacks, suicide tactics, and the glorification of death as honor revealed the terrifying extremity of wartime ideology. The Battle of Manila, 1945, between the Japanese and Americans, also led to the death of over 100,000 Filipino civilians, caught in the crossfire or executed by retreating Japanese troops in a last act of cruelty. The atomic bomb, weapon of victory or mass murder. The use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki remains one of the most controversial actions in military history. The bombings killed over 200,000 people, most of them civilians, with many more dying in the months and years afterward from radiation sickness and injuries. While the US justified the attacks as necessary to end the war and avoid a land invasion, historians continue to debate whether Japan was already on the verge of surrender. Some argue a real motive was to intimidate the Soviet Union and establish post-war dominance. What remains undeniable is the suffering endured by innocent people, burned, disfigured, and vaporized in seconds. The bombings unleashed the nuclear age, forever changing warfare and geopolitics. The forgotten victims, disabled, Roma, and others. The Jewish genocide is the most well-known atrocity of the Holocaust, but millions of other victims also suffered in silence. The Roma, Gypsies were targeted for extermination in what is now called the portrayed. An estimated 220,000 to 500,000 were killed. The disabled and mentally ill were also victims of the Nazi T4 program, where thousands were euthanized or sterilized in the name of racial purity. The program was a precursor to the gas chambers and served as a testbed for mass murder techniques. Jehovah's Witnesses, homosexuals, political dissidents, and Slavs were also persecuted, imprisoned, or killed, yet their stories remain largely untold in mainstream narrative. Cover-ups and denial. One of the darkest legacies of World War II is how many atrocities were covered up, denied, or ignored. In Japan, war crimes trials were selective, and the emperor's role in the war was never fully investigated due to American strategic interests. In Germany, many lower-ranking Nazis reintegrated into society, taking roles in business, politics, and education. Denazification efforts were inconsistent, especially in West Germany, where anti-communism took priority over justice. In the Soviet Union, mass graves were hidden, and the truth about Stalin's crimes was suppressed for decades. Even in Allied countries, uncomfortable truths were sometimes buried in national pride and victory celebrations.